Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Today, I am talking about one of the rarest intact cars from the first movie. That's right, we're talking about Vince's Maxima. Let's get into it right now. First off, I never intended for this car to be in the movie. I had no designs of doing that. That's not why I built the car. But that's the way it played out. So back when we got down to the business of selecting cars for the first movie, the small budget limited us to certain cars. Case in point, Vince's car. I had several candidates that I presented to the production team. One was a Mitsubishi 3000 GT. It didn't even need to be a VR4 because we're not going to see the engine. I presented a Subaru Impreza 2.5 RS, a 1998 Toyota MR2 Turbo like this one, or perhaps a Z32 300ZX. So what happened? A lot of things happened. I'll get to this right after this break. Have you ever Googled your name? If you have, you were probably shocked to see some of your personal information floating around for the whole world to see. Every once in a while, I Google myself just for fun. I'm always surprised what kind of things are floating around the internet. It's just creepy that these companies have this information on me. So this is what they do. These data brokers are making money hand over fist by selling your info to robocallers, spammers, and in some cases, much worse. This is why I'm talking about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura can identify data brokers who are exposing your information and then submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do that. So let Aura handle all of it for you. Now you can get off of all of those lists. You can try Aura free for 2 weeks using my link here below, aura.com/Craig. Aura does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't even see. It's really easy to set up so you don't have to bother downloading several different apps just to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft, insurance, and even more. You get everything at one affordable price. So let Aura do all the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. So during the process of looking at cars that were showing up at our weekly car casting calls, one of the primary criteria was that the cars had to be affordable to the point that if we needed to build several stunt cars, it wouldn't chew up too much of our budget. And that was not easy. Back then, those cars are pretty expensive. At the time, the naturally aspirated 300ZX was already beyond our budget. As for the MR2 Turbo, the producers weren't really thrilled by the look of that car. A few said that it didn't really fit the Vince character. Some comments from the production team suggested that the car seemed better suited for a female character. Well, I didn't think that myself, but I can see where some people might go that way. Another commenter thought that Matt Schultz, who played Vince, was too tall and bulky for the car. Now, I didn't argue that point because he kind of was, and I think they made the right choice there too. I had high hopes for the 1998 Subaru Impreza. I really love this car, but the only one of these cars that showed up at one of our car casting calls was stickered up with WRC graphics. I reminded the production team that the graphics could be removed if they wanted to, but they just didn't go for it. A Mitsubishi 3000 GT or a Dodge Stealth I thought would fit the character, but the only one that showed up at the casting call was a white Spider with a lowrider paint scheme. They didn't like the graphics. Even if they did like the graphics, it would be too difficult to replicate it if we needed to build stunt cars or even repair it on set if it got damaged just by itself. So by the time the casting calls were all concluded, the cars that we had already picked were back at the picture car warehouse where the stunt cars were being assembled. We had all those cars in there, and the only thing we were getting down to is, what is Vince gonna drive? It went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We were talking, scratching our heads, trying to find a suitable car for Vince. I even suggested an E36 M3, presented pictures of Troy Wilhite's beautiful M3. Again, if we had to buy stunt cars for the M3s, it was going to be out of our budget. But in one of my weekly meetings at the picture car warehouse, my boss David Martyr asked me to stand in for a camera test that Eddie Paul was working on. Eddie Paul was working on a new piece of technology, and it was called 4D. If you know anything about 3D, 4D is 3D, but you don't have to wear the glasses to get the effect. So they needed a car up there to do some test shots. Since my Supra was already inside the picture car warehouse where they're building stunt replicas of my car, I couldn't drive that car. So what did I do? I drove my Maxima to the meeting. Now you're asking me, why did I even buy a Maxima in the first place? So if you're curious, at the time I was driving from Orange County, California to Beverly, Wilshire every day, and it was about 52 miles each way, so it's 100 miles along. My wife already had a 1996 Nissan Maxima. It was a decent commuter, and it towed my shifter cart many times, so I figured this was a good car, it was reliable. She wasn't ready to give up her because I had modified her cars, and she really liked that car. So I was forced to go out and buy my own. So I went down to a dealer, jumped in the SE trim because it had nice leather seats, and it was a little more upscale. I chose an automatic transmission because, again, I was commuting 100 miles a day. Obviously, I know how to drive a stick shift, but I was not doing that in LA traffic. So it was certainly nothing special, coming from a 500 horsepower supercharged Fox body and my Supra. So I decided to look into some performance mods. What did I do? I had recently developed a relationship with Stillen during the first phase of my Supra modifications. So they had a Stillen bump on my Supra and the side skirts. So that I knew these guys. So I decided to look through the Stillen catalog because I know they made stuff for Maxima. They had everything I could wish for. They had a tasteful body kit. It was a urethane front lip as well as urethane side skirts and rear spats. It looked clean and not ricey. So I said, yep, pull the trigger, we'll do that. For power adders, they didn't offer a turbo, so I went with their Vortex supercharger kit, a catback system, and now that the car got a big pump in power, I just decided, sure, if you're going faster, you need better brakes. So I opted for their Stillen's big brake kit. It was fantastic. To sharpen the handling, I went with Eibach Pro Springs and Stillen sway bars to tighten up the handling. Fine, not too rough. Basically, I bought the whole SMX kit for the Maxima. Now, the car was making 247 horsepower at the wheels. And of course, this car was not a rocket ship, but for my daily commute, it suited me just fine. Once the bolt-ons were in place, I was ready to do some additional cosmetics to the car. I decided to paint the car Chrysler Viper GTS blue. This is the color that they used on the Dodge Viper GTS from about 96 to, I want to say, 2000, 2001. But before we painted the car, I decided to make the hood swing forward, inspired by the many Datsun Zs I had owned over the many years. And to manage engine heat, I took the hood to Sir Michael's in Orange County to have reverse louvers punched into the hood because now there was a supercharger on there that's going to heat everything up. For the mirrors, I bought Bomex side view mirrors from a 240SX, which actually fit the Maxima very well. Inside the car, I had blue carbon fiber dash kit from Tourisport. This kit was top quality, not like some of the Chinese stuff that was floating about back in those days. I then went to Stitchcraft for some blue suede seats inserts. An HKS boost gauge was placed in one of the cup holders in the center console, and I stopped there. That was basically done with the interior. So I had no intention to go further with the engine mods because this was a commuter car. Remember that the stock Maxima made only 190 horsepower. That's not a lot, but it wasn't terrible at that time. In stock trim, the Maxima takes 7.4 seconds to get to 60 miles per hour. It took 15.5 seconds to cover the quarter mile. Not a rocket ship. But after the supercharger was in place, the SMX Maxima got to 60 miles an hour in 5.9 seconds, and it covered the quarter mile in 14.4 seconds. This made the Maxima just as fast as a Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4 and a twin turbo 300 ZX, both in 0 to 60 time and in their quarter mile times. So for the final touch, I went crazy with the audio video system, got that all done because the last 5 cars before that all had crazy audio video. With the car now the way I wanted it, I used it as my commuter car, and so when I was summoned up to the picture car warehouse for the 4D camera test, the only car I had to drive was the Maxima, so I drove it up there. When I got up there, David Martyr looked at the car and he said, "Why can't we use this car for events?" And I said, that leaves me with no car. By that time though, the script was already finished. I saw that there were no stunts that were assigned to whatever car Vince would be driving, and it did not need a stunt car. A deal was struck and I dropped the car off a few days later. I even reminded him about that available BMW. It was denied, and so our only choice right at that moment was my Maxima. and that was it. I didn't see the car again in person until I went to Race Wars, where they had it in the background. A few months later, I saw a clip of the movie during editing. The dialogue about the nitrous timer was nonsense.
Another millisecond, just tune the NOS timer, you'll run nights.
What I originally wrote in the script was this FMU, fuel management, it is a Band-Aid, and you're going to need bigger injectors too. That, not tuning a nitrous timer. If you don't know what an FMU is, it's an auxiliary fuel pressure regulator that responds to boost. Its job is to provide increased fuel pressure relative to the boost pressure. That's it. And it's not bullshit. In fact, it was often used in supercharged cars, even in my Mustang like 5 years earlier. Of course, this car didn't get much screen time, but perhaps the best scene is when Vince reverses out of the driveway of the Toretto house. You remember that scene? Also remember that this car had an automatic transmission, so I want you to listen to the soundtrack. If you listen closely to that scene, the stunt driver puts the car into reverse, then floors it, then quickly shifts into neutral, then revved it up, and he dropped it down into drive. Because of the slow wheel speed, the computer shifted into second gear, and you can hear the car bog down. When it bogged down, the computer detected that the driver still had the gas to the floor, and so it now commanded a downshift into first gear. and then you can hear it, man. And when I heard that in editing, I go, I better check my transmission when I get the car back. When I got there, I drove the car, and the car drove fine. But what I did discover that the right rear quarter panel was smashed in because of the fight scene between Brian and Vince. And I said to my boss, a little problem there. He goes, yeah, don't worry, we'll pay for it. Just get an estimate and they'll take care of it. The damage came up to about $4,200 and change, but Universal paid the body shop directly. They treated me fantastic the whole time. I took the car to the movie premiere on opening night. By that time, I had stripped the car of the nuclear shark graphic, and the car became a showcase for JBL and Infinity speakers. The car went on to be featured in some audio magazines and another magazine like LS in Japan and a couple of others in Europe. That was the end of that. In 2001, I took the car to the Super Street Tour in Miami. This was a road trip to the Nopi Nationals. It was during the trip that I changed the TSW wheels because they were starting to flake. But this time when I was ready to move on, I had already purchased an R34 GTR for my next project. My wife had sold her Maxima and had purchased a 99 Lexus GS 400, and I still had my Supra. So we had 4 cars and only a 2-car garage. So I decided to sell the car. I wasn't commuting anymore, so I just didn't need the car anymore. I put it up for sale, and it was sold to a fellow by the name John Teisling, and over the next years I lost track of the car. Then one day I heard that another movie car collector named Mark Andon acquired the car, and as of early 2024 he still owns this car. I met him once at Fuel Fest 4 years ago. I spent a couple minutes talking to him, and he just turned around and walked away. I know, where did he go? Where did he go? I don't know. I haven't talked to him since. And of course, there's only one of these cars. Universal did not build a replica. This makes the Maxima one of the rarest intact cars from the first movie. So and that's it. It was fun having the car, but I really preferred the car without the shark graphics. I got a lot of compliments when the car was clean and just blue, tastefully modified. Eventually, it was replaced by a E46 M3 that became a wide-body car. So it came and went, and it was immortalized in a Hollywood movie. So if you like my video, please remember to like, comment, and please subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. And take a look at my merchandise in the description above. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.